If you love palettes as much as I do, then you're going to love this video where I show you all of the palettes I used in January and the looks that I created with them. Do you see my rainbow? I have a crystal bedside lamp and the sun is coming in. It's getting late in the afternoon and it's hitting that and it has created rainbows all over my room. I absolutely love it. It reminds me of that scene in the movie Pollyanna. There, that's not bad at all. Hello friends, Tina here. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I am kicking off a brand new series with the very ambitious goal of using every palette in my collection in 2024. There is a catch though, and I'm going to tell you about it in just a minute. So if you're ready for a fun palette party, then grab a snack and a beverage and let's get to it. So this was pretty simple. How it worked was when I used a palette, I took a picture of the look and then I put the palette in this basket. I could use the palette again through the month, or I could pick a new one. Now, I started this a few days into January and it kind of evolved as the month went along and I figured out what I actually wanted to do with it. So the first few palettes I used, I actually don't have a picture of them. And then I got smart and I realized that if I took a picture with the palette showing, it would be way easier to remember when I updated which look went with which palette. But here's the catch I mentioned before. I am not going to put these palettes back into my palette inventory over here. You can just kind of see the baskets in the edge of the frame here, because I have a lot of palettes and I find that I tend to reach for the same ones over and over. So these palettes are going to get locked up in a palette vault. Not really, they're just going to go in a drawer, but I am not going to use them again until I get through a significant number of the palettes that I have in these two baskets, in this basket, and then in another drawer. If you saw my palette inventory and declutter that I did last February, you know that I am not short on palettes, even after getting rid of 45% of my palette collection. I will put that video in the cards and in the description down below if you're new and you haven't seen it yet. And of course, I've added palettes since I did that declutter. So all of these beautiful palettes are going to get put away, except for 3 of them. Each month, I'm going to allow myself to select 3 palettes that can go back in the inventory and be used again. And if I want to select the same 3 palettes to stay in there all year, I can do that. Or next month, I can pick a different 3, and the 3 that I put back this month, if I used them again, might have to go in the vault. And rather than thinking of these beautiful palettes being locked away in a vault, we can just consider that they're kind of on a palette vacation, maybe in the Bahamas. Okay. But you're going to have to stick around to the end to find out which 3 palettes get to go back into the rotation. So let's dive in and take a look. In January, I used 15 palettes and 1 single, and the palettes had a value that ranged from $3.99 to $69. Some of these amazing palettes stole my heart. They're so blendable and pigmented and created amazing, beautiful looks. And then there were 1 or 2 that were just kind of, Unfortunately, there's 1 palette that I absolutely love that I discovered is going to have to be rehomed. And I'll explain about that when I get to it. Okay, so I'm going to scooch over here just a little bit so I've got room to put the looks on this side. Palette number 1 we're going to talk about is the Tati Beauty Textured Neutrals. I absolutely love this palette. During the declutter last year, I seriously considered getting rid of it, and I'm so glad that I did not. Now, I'm probably not going to use the glitters on the top again because contacts and glitter just don't mix. But I like the rest of them. And it's just a really pretty palette, and despite having a little bit of age on it, it performs just as well as it did when I first got it. All right, so here's the secret. I don't actually know right now while I'm filming this which of these palettes I have looks for and which ones I don't. So I will figure that out during the edit. But right now I can't say, here's 1 that I did or here's 2 that I did. Some of the palettes I use more than once. Maybe next month I'll have my act together a little bit better and actually keep a list or something. But seriously, I've got 2 painting projects going on, and now this one, the lists are starting to get a little insane. Pretty sure I did take a picture of this one. This is the Be Mine palette from Sydney Grace. I got this during their Christmas in July sale. I am planning to purchase during the Christmas in July sale again, and I just think this is gorgeous. I don't know, I don't want to break We'll do it this way so that I don't break it. It has a row of neutrals that kind of lean a little warm, and then the rest of it is pretty cool-toned, rosy neutrals. You can get super deep and smoky. It's also got this kind of olivey green color down there, and it's just so pretty. After watching Jen Phelps' palette declutter, I decided to dig into my Zoeva palettes again, and I used the Offline from Zoeva. This one has neutrals and purples, and if you notice the X next to this shade right here, this is one that I can't use because it has carmine in it, but it's the only one in this palette, and so I didn't declutter the palette for that reason. And honestly, it's probably not one I would use very often anyway, because I just don't use red shades very much, and I don't think it goes as well with the rest of this palette as the other shades do. So I wasn't really heartbroken that I can't use it. I used the Okalan Ethereal palette, and this is a Huda Beauty dupe. I don't know off the top of my head which one, but I will figure it out and put it on the screen for you. And I think you're going to see a lot of similarities here because I do tend to kind of gravitate to a similar color story. And so this one has some of those rosy neutrals as well, but it does lean a lot warmer than the Be Mine palette does. I haven't really decided how I feel about this jelly texture here that has like the pigmentation beads suspended in it. I don't think I like it very much. It's just really sheer, and I don't think you get much payoff, and then it just feels a little sticky. I think it eventually does dry down, but I don't know. It just doesn't do much for me. I dug out my OPV Spotlight palette. I haven't used this in forever. I think this might be a dupe too, but I can't remember for what. And it's a very kind of grungy, deep palette. I did have to bring in, I think I used my e.l.f. Bite Size, this one here, for a transition shade because there's nothing in here that's light enough for a transition shade for me. And I'm pretty sure that I did. And this one I'm pretty sure that I did take pictures of. So I will show you the look that I created. And it'd probably be helpful if I knew what shades I used when I created my looks. But I don't, so maybe I'll improve on that next month. I received this from Nomad in PR, and I am so glad. It is absolutely stunning. Look at those colors. Oh, there you go. You can just... I have a whole video where I talked about this palette and did a look, and I will link that in the cards and down below so you can take a look at it. But then I played with it again and did a different look, and so this one's definitely in the running for one that gets to go back in the inventory. I also used this Nomad palette, the Ghost Town palette. You want to watch it shift just for a second? Okay, enough of that. And again, I can't remember what shades I used, but you'll see them over here. This is just so pretty, and it has so much versatility in what you can do. If you want to just, you know, go neutral, you could go all matte if you wanted to. I mean, I don't know why you would want to. Shimmer's so much fun, but you can go deep and smoky with the blues, or you can get into the greens, and you can mix and match. And look at this shade. Oh, man. I mean, there's just so much in here, and the shimmers are like butter, and the mattes blend so good. Nomad is really amazing. And I kind of wish I didn't like them so much because they're also kind of expensive. This is the last of the larger palettes, and this is the one that kind of makes me sad, because I found out that it has carmine in 4 of the shades. I was so excited when I saw this on Ipsy's site for $25, and I had a $10 off anything coupon, so I got it for $15 that I did not stop to check the ingredients. And Natasha Denona, in case you didn't know, is not vegan. Now, I don't really seek out vegan brands for the sake of being vegan. I seek out vegan brands for the sake of not having any carmine in them. And I didn't check. And that's on me. Thankfully, I didn't pay $69 for it. That's the value of this palette. I do also have a video of 3 looks with this palette. There's nothing wrong with this palette. I absolutely love it. But when you've got 4 shades that you really like, that you can't use, and I can't remember exactly what they were. I know it was Holly, pretty sure Flare, Belle, and then I can't remember what the other one was. I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do with this, but it is a beautiful palette, and it actually gives me another reason to like the Alter Ego dupes because they are vegan. So I might look into getting the Sakura palette from Alter Ego, which is their dupe for this Natasha Denona palette. Moving on to some of the smaller palettes. The first one is this Marc Jacobs Fantascene. I received this in friend mail and just absolutely love it. Again, it has the pretty rosy tones, but they're a little bit warmer, and they're just so pretty and such a good formula. I really enjoy using this palette. The e.l.f. Rose Gold Nude palette, when I first used this palette, I thought that I didn't like it until an hour and a half later, I walked past a mirror and caught the shimmer in the mirror and was just stunned at how pretty it actually was. Sometimes these studio lights kind of wash things out, and you have to get into natural light or regular lighting in order to actually see what something looks like. And after that, I have just absolutely loved this palette. I featured this in a full face of e.l.f. I did recently. I will link that one as well, and I do highly recommend this palette. By the way, things that I'm talking about will be linked in the description box below. Some of them are over on ShopMy, some of them are Amazon, but where possible, they are affiliate links. You, of course, do not have to follow my links to purchase, but if you do, it helps support my channel, and I very much appreciate it. One that I wasn't very thrilled with is this Wet n Wild color icon in Lights Off. And one reason I didn't like it is that the mattes are all really deep. This is a lighter shade, but it's a satin. And so I wouldn't use that like as a blending shade. Of course, I always have my trusty Wet n Wild Brulee on hand for just such a situation. But I also had to use that to blend with one of these shades to make it light enough to be a transition shade for me, because this went on way darker than I like to usually go into my crease with. I'm pretty sure I used these shades here, and I don't know what it is about grays and silver that always go blue on me. If I look at these on my finger, they look gray and charcoal, but on my eyes, they look blue. So despite the fact that it was kind of deep and smoky, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's just not what I go for a lot. I also wasn't super thrilled with the shimmers in here. They just felt kind of thin and didn't really have a lot of payoff. I like the e.l.f. Bite Size a lot more. I like that this has more shades in it for a really reasonable price, but if the shades don't give you payoff, then I'm not sure that it's worth it. So I don't know if I recommend this one or not. I'm gonna have to play with it a little bit more, but I think that it might be the loser of January. Not that I'm ranking these, but if I were ranking them, that one would definitely be in last place. Another really affordable one that I love is this Hard Candy Mantras palette, Going Nude, Never Looking Back. Featured this in a video last year with some new makeup, and it's just a neutral palette, kind of warm toned, and really nice shimmers, really nice mattes. I created some really pretty looks with it. So I definitely enjoyed that one. I think it's the same price as the Wet n Wild, also has 10 pans, but I feel like it's just a lot better. I used the Feels palette when I did my ColourPop mystery box unboxing, and I love this. I think this is a beautiful palette. ColourPop is very iffy for me now. A lot of their palettes have carmine. In fact, this mystery box in December was the only purchase I made from ColourPop in the entire year of 2023. There were some palettes that I was interested in, and then I checked the ingredients and I just passed them by. So ColourPop, if you're listening, it'd be really cool if you would take carmine out of your palettes. But this is really just a basic neutral with this really pretty green and a really pretty pink shimmer. So I like this. I'm glad it's part of my collection. This little Lucky Chick palette was part of my accidental Ipsy bag that I got in January. If you haven't seen that, of course, it'll be linked. And again, more neutrals, but this purple right here is absolutely gorgeous. It's stunning on the eyes. It does have a pressed glitter that I'll never use, but it would make a great little travel palette. I also used my e.l.f. Bite Size in Cream and Sugar, and this is part of the Out the Door in 24 project that I'll be doing. So this one will not be going into the palette vault, but it also will not count against the 3 that I get to keep because it is actually part of a project, and so it has to stay out. And not only did I use this for a complete look, but I also used it as a companion to some other looks, and I have this shade on my lid today. My look today is actually a combination of 3 palettes, I think, plus the Brulee. It's kind of extra for a pretty neutral look. I said I used 15 palettes. I actually used 16. Here's a bonus. This is the Zeesea palette. It's part of my Panning Cats and Dogs, and I forgot that I used it because it's in a different basket. And I did use this for a look in January, and I used a couple of the shades in here for my look today. Isn't that pretty? Do you want to just watch the glitter fall for a second? So pretty. I do have a code for Zeesea, by the way, if there's something that you've been wanting to get. It's TinaH15, and there's a link down below. Then I have one single, and this was from my friend Cindy over at Beyond 50 Skin. It's Bodyography, and it is in the shade Celestial. Oh, this is so pretty. And honestly, I was going to use this and I couldn't find it. I thought I dropped it because I usually just kind of keep it sitting on my shelf over here. And so I was looking and looking and looking, and then found it buried under the palettes in my palettes I used basket. But look at that. I mean, it's just so pretty. It is beautiful for a one and done. If you just put a little of your bronzer in the crease and then put this on the lid, you're set to go for just about anything. This does remind me of the L'Oreal Infallible in Amber Rush. Do you guys remember these? It has the same little thing on top, although I think Amber Rush might be a little pinker. Yeah. Amber Rush is on this side and it's a little pinker, and this Bodyography is a little bit more gold. I'm getting ready to film a declutter of my singles, hot shadows, shadow sticks, and cream shadows. So if you don't want to miss that, then make sure you're subscribed and set your notifications to all so that you won't miss it when it gets uploaded. It's going to be later in February sometime. All right, drum roll, please. Are you ready to find out which lucky 3 palettes get to go back in the makeup inventory and stay out of the palette vault for another month? This was a really hard decision because, especially being the first month, I wasn't really trying to grab a representative sample or do anything. I just picked the palettes that I reach for first. And so a lot of these palettes are ones that I use over and over and over. And that's kind of the point, because as we get into this, say April, May, I'm going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel and going to be having to use those palettes that just don't get any love from me. And then maybe I'll be forced to make a decision on whether they stay or not. But the palettes that get to go back in rotation this time are the Sydney Grace Be Mine palette, the Nomad Stargazing palette. It's just too new. I'm not ready to put it away. I want to play with it more. And the Ghost Town USA palette. This one was a gift from my husband for our anniversary, and I just don't want to put it away. So those 3 get to go back to be used again, and if I use them in February, they're going to have to go back in the basket to tell you about next month, and then they might have to get put away if there's something I like better. So like I said in the beginning, if you love palettes as much as I do, then make sure to stick around so you don't miss any installments of this new series, and be sure to be on the lookout for the next one at the beginning of March. I'm going to try to do a better job of keeping track of the order I used the palette and the shades that I used in those palettes so that I can give you even more information next month. I mentioned a bunch of videos in here that if you haven't seen, you can go down in the description box and click on them to watch. I'll put a couple over here to make it easy for you. So if you have a little more time to stick around, then I hope you'll go check out one of those. If not, that's fine too. I will see you in the next one. I hope you all have a beautiful, blessed day. Bye-bye.